We are all, each of us, born in the passenger seat of the car that is our life. None of us is born as the driver, as much as we'd love to think it. There are certainly advantages to becoming the driver, but to become the driver is a choice. It does not happen by accident or unintentionally. To become the driver of your own life in a complicated cultural environment requires learning and practice. It requires open-mindedness and an interest in learning how your psychology works and how it can be gamed. How you can use models like the minimum viable lifestyle as one example to make the experience more positive and less painful. Questions you will answer for yourself by becoming the driver. Why do I feel so shit when I don't expect to? There's a good one. Why do I feel so terrible for no apparent reason? What am I really capable of? It's different. Why is common sense so uncommon? Why is becoming the driver such intentional work? So that's the last piece of the blog. We were discussing this in the previous episode as well. We are born in the passenger seat of our own life. Today I want to discuss that idea of how to become the driver, how to take the reins and get in control. So the first step for me would just be what we're doing now, what we've been doing in this sequence of podcast episodes, which is learning more about how this thing in our head ticks, how we're wired, how we interact with the world, and what the consequences are of that. So that would be the first step, understanding. The second is quite obvious. To go back to this little metaphor, you have to take the wheel. Now, to backpedal, it does make sense that we're born in the passenger seat, even though it seems not ideal. But quite literally in the case of driving, we're incapable of driving at the start. When we're an infant, we won't survive without care, without a mother or father or caregiver looking after us and helping us through the world. And many other animals are like that as well. So there's no need to be too disheartened or discouraged by your own limitations. But if you think about yourself as a young child, we really do need to be driven. We need to be driven to a point where we're able to take over the wheel. Now, most of us, well, where I'm from anyway, we start taking the wheel in terms of literally driving on the road at about 16 years of age rather. And it's, even in my experience, it's never completely smooth sailing. There's always some scary moments. You start off learning, we call it the L's here, the learners. And you start off with your parent normally in the front seat with you, watching you, not really trusting you, shouting out. And I think my mother still, to this day, when we're driving in the car together, still lurches every time there's a turn or a car coming, like I haven't been driving for more than 10 years. But that's what parents are like, especially mums. Bless you, mum, if you're listening. And I just think it's the perfect metaphor. I mean, the way we kind of take over the wheel is so scrappy, but there's also this big tension with those people who are used to looking after us, our primary caregiver, and being scared when they see us go off and drive on our own for the first time. So the problem is, one, no one likes a backseat driver. No one likes someone who's behind them trying to call shots. And when there's too many people in the car trying to tell the driver where to go, it's not really the best experience. The other thing is, or way worse, it's very difficult when people don't trust you to drive, when they don't let you get in the driver's seat, where they tell you where you're going to go. To repeat the point I said in the last episode, this is so tragic because if life in the passenger seat is comfortable, then that's all good, but we don't have control over it. We can't make sure that even if it is comfortable now, that it will continue to be comfortable. And so whatever snare lies ahead, whatever incident the driver will lead us into, we're basically handcuffing ourselves to that outcome, saying, If it crashes, I'm going to be crashing with it. If it goes off the edge of a cliff, I'll still be here in the passenger seat. I think makes much more sense for us to be accountable for our own lives, to be the one driving. When there's a mistake, when there's a crash, to be the person who owns up, who goes and puts their phone number on the windscreen of the person instead of driving off and saying, I'm sorry, I'm not perfect. I dented your car, or I crashed your car, and maybe I hurt you. And I'm sorry. It was an accident. And I think that is not what most people do. But it seems like the way to drive. The implication about this whole driving thing is that we're all using the same roads. So when one person drives irresponsibly, it does impact everyone else. But then again, no one's a perfect driver. Everyone goes from being a passenger to an imperfect driver, and no one's flawless. But if you're irresponsible, you know you're going to hurt people, as well as probably yourself. So it's a complicated thing. It's about being intentional. Now, how to become the driver? Wow. This really has, I think, limitless applications. In one sense, I think about awareness, just being aware of ourselves. Again, this is the heart of the conversations this sequence of my podcast is talking about. How to actually be aware of ourselves. Why we feel these things. Why we have these experiences. That's the reason. I guess that's the outcome I'm hoping for, because I've had that so many times when these things have been learnt or occurred. I'm hoping you get heaps of those yourself when you listen. That's why I've always felt that way. That's why people always do that. That's why I feel like I don't have control. And it's really about being intentional, about steering. You know, you can be the person who takes the first job or relationship or university degree or whatever that comes along. But that's like just taking the first turn off when you're driving. The first turn off of the freeway, is that what you're looking for? So it's about being intentional. It's about using that 1,000 doors to make that journey an exciting one. 1,000 Doors was episode 2. No, it wasn't. That's ridiculous. My own podcast. It was episodes 4 and 5. They would fire me if they could, but I'm in good with the boss, and there's not many other people who can run the With Joe Wehbe podcast. I apologize for that. So one element of it is awareness. The other thing I would say is learning more broadly. And I talked in one of the previous episodes, that metaphor of just that not the current GPS that's always connected to satellite, but those old GPS, the old one I've got stashed in my car, which you have to manually update. Treating yourself like that, this continually learning vehicle, that's driving. That's driving. We all have this assumption that we're driving, that we start out with. But really we don't understand just how we are, just like the other animals, made very instinctive. We're made with pre-wired reactions for certain situations. They vary a little bit from person to person, but ultimately that is our default state. And growing up should ideally be a process of learning how to get into that driver's seat. Because it's not going to happen by accident. It's a choice. No one's going to hand you the wheel. No one can force you to take the wheel. It's a choice. And the benefits, you're in control. And you get to decide where you go. Because when you realize that, you decide, well, why would I just go to average places? Why won't I go to great places? Why won't I drive other people around? Become a great driver. And at the very least, the biggest benefit of being a great driver is probably just not crashing into the other people out there, because one way or another you're on the road. I think that's enough for today. Just remember that if you think of anyone who'd benefit from hearing this, to share it with them, because after all, the best way to open 1,000 doors for you is to concentrate on opening doors for others. Thank you for joining us at the With Joe Wehbe podcast, and we'll see you again next time.